Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Hello and welcome to the 39th episode of Living on the Edge. This week we take a look at the child labour scenario in our country and ask if child labour can ever be fully banned. We report on the worst ever forest fires in UP and Himachal that have been raging continuously for several weeks, and we reveal how hypocritical Indian attitudes to cleanliness are. There are about 50 million children in our country between the age of 4 and 16 who work to earn a living. They work in hazardous industries for long hours and for a pittance. Gaurav Gupta of Yamunanagar, Haryana wanted us to do something on this. Nandini Rajwade's report is an attempt to understand just how badly children are exploited and whether child labour can ever be completely banned.
खुदा बख्श है, मैं 10 साल का हूँ। इधर से बहका कर ले गया, चलो मैं खाना खिलाऊंगा, पढ़ाऊंगा, अच्छा अच्छा काम सिखाऊंगा। ऐसे बहका कर ले गया। मेरा पैसा नहीं देता था, काम तो बर्तन धोता था दिन भर होटल में, सुबह 5 बजे से 4 बजे 12 बजे तक।
Khuda Baksh began his working life at the age of 5. He is just one of an estimated 44 million children who work to support themselves and their families. They work in both the organized and unorganized sectors as domestic help, in stone quarries, at beedi and glass making, and in the firework industry. And these are only a few of the enterprises run on child labor.
6 बजे आती है और वापस शाम का कितने बजे जाओ बेटा?
5 बजे।
5 बजे। कितने दिनों से कर रही बेटा?
2 साल।
कितने साल के बच्चे आते हैं यहाँ पे?
कोई भी आ जाए 10 साल फिर आती है, 10 साल 12 साल।
और उससे कम?
बस यही आती है।
अच्छा, कितने बच्चे काम करते हैं यहाँ पे?
40।
Sivakashi in Tamil Nadu is perhaps the most infamous example of how children are exploited. For decades, employers have been able to bypass every law in the book by using children to make firecrackers and matches. For 12 hours a day, over 2.5 lakh children between the age of 4 and 15 handle dangerous chemicals in subhuman conditions. Though children aren't the only ones affected, their age, underdeveloped bodies and docile demeanor makes them more vulnerable than the ordinary worker. Susceptibility to disease increases in the absence of environmental safeguards and the lack of accountability for worker ill health.
This is happening because of the greediness of the employers and their callous nexus with the law enforcing agencies. क्योंकि जो भी कानून बने हैं वो कानून अपने आप में एक तो कमज़ोर हैं और जो कुछ भी है वो लागू नहीं होते। दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि बच्चे चूँकि सबसे सस्ते मजदूर हैं, यहाँ तक कि मुफ्त के मजदूर हैं बहुत सारे मामले में, उनको सिखाने के नाम पर लगा लिया और कई साल तक उनको 1 रुपया भी नहीं देते।
Perhaps the most attractive facet of child labor for potential employers is that it can't organize itself to fight exploitation. Secondly, children tend to be docile and easier to handle than adults. They work long hours without complaint. Thirdly, law enforcement is seen as weak and ineffectual and hardly a deterrent to large-scale employment of children. And finally, and most importantly, child labour is cheap. It can easily be replenished from a labour market that runs into millions. In fact, many people argue that abolishing child labour implies cutting off their source of livelihood. Just how significant the right of a child to childhood is of course another matter.
मैं वहाँ पर 7 साल से कालीम का कारोबार कर रहे थे। मारते थे, गाली देते थे, काम भी अच्छा करते थे तब भी मारते थे। अभी भी चेन है, यहाँ पर भी है चेन।
Physical abuse is the norm rather than the exception. But this is only part of the problem. Child labour in all its complexities throws up new problems every day. And perhaps the most worrying aspect is the rapid increase in the number of child sex workers. They are not yet seen as child labourers and are outside the purview of existing laws.
Where can you have a most oppressive, exploitative labour than prostitution, where a child has to sell his or her body? There are instances when little girls have been forced to service even about 20 males a night.
Ironically, it is the ambivalence of law and our own inability to see child labour in all its manifestations that is preventing the emergence of a comprehensive policy.
कानून में एक तरफ तो है रेगुलराइजेशन ऑफ चाइल्ड लेबर और दूसरी तरफ है प्रिवेंशन ऑफ चाइल्ड लेबर। तो रोकना और चलाना ये साथ साथ तो चल नहीं सकता। तो ना तो हैजार्डस इंडस्ट्री में वो रुका और ना कहीं और रुका।
The reality is that children work over 12 hours. They work in hazardous industries. They are seldom paid what they should be paid, and their employers are very rarely held accountable. In these circumstances, it isn't surprising that we've been unable to get beyond moral posturing, though the government intends to take stronger steps.
Well, the government has expressed a firm commitment to the elimination of child labour, as we know. The Prime Minister has announced a special programme focusing on hazardous industries in the first instance as a priority, and to take children out of those industries and replace them in schools.
The government's hand may be forced by the child labour issue becoming internationalized. The US is calling for the ban on the import of items made by children. Similar bans are being contemplated by a host of European countries, thus intensifying the child labour debate in India. Although there's cynicism about the motives of the West, it is clear that there are many questions about child labour that need urgent answers. The most important is it possible and advisable to completely ban child labour?
If you pass a bill today in the parliament and say from tomorrow there's a total ban on child labour, it's not going to work. It's not going to work in the way that we think it should work. What will happen is that then work becomes illegal, and these children will be working in far more exploitative and oppressive conditions than what they are today, because today at least they have a law which regulates their work, and they could even fight or demand for it.
The government, as a first step, has unveiled an ambitious 850 crore rupee plan to eliminate child labour over the next 5 years in the high-risk industries.
Can't happen overnight. So our target date is year 2000. That gives us about 5 years time. It requires some money. So government have planned some 850 crore rupee expenditure in order to achieve this target. And in the current year, about 35 crore rupees, I'm told, has been allotted by the Labour Department for facilitating training, education, to take these children out of those industries which are hazardous to their health.
But it is only mass awareness and consumer concern that can play a pivotal role in eliminating this social evil altogether. Everyone knows that childhood can never be recovered, and yet millions of our children pass this stage by. their dreams cut short by long hours of labor and the cruelly high standards demanded by their employers.
From Nandini Rajware's report on child labour, we turn to the forest fires in UP and Himachal that have been raging continuously for several weeks. Just how did these fires start? Isn't there some way of containing them? And what are the consequences for the already degraded hills? Varun Verma of Kanpur, UP wanted us to cover the fires. And so Priya Somaya spent 3 days and nights following a blazing trail of destruction to bring you this report.
It's 5 in the evening. This fire has been blazing for over 24 hours. It's already engulfed huge areas, and smoke and fire makes the area unbearably hot. And even as we film, the fire advances at a menacing pace. For over a fortnight now, fires are blazing in the hills of Uttar Pradesh and Himachal. They've engulfed huge forest tracts, reducing vegetation and precious trees to cinders. Every year during the summer, sporadic fires are reported, but they are easily put out. This year, however, the fires have spread over huge areas in the hills, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Forest officials had just finished putting out the fire in the area behind me, but moments later there was another flare-up, and as you can see, the fire is spreading rapidly. The fact that the forests are on a hillside makes it even more difficult to control them. Forest officials are faced with an overwhelming task as these fires spread rapidly. Within seconds, what begins as a small spark leads to a whole hillside going up in flames. Dry pine needles and leaves in summer prove to be instantly inflammable, and there's enough burning material to fuel huge blazes. Besides, the resin in pine trees is as inflammable as petrol, so sometimes entire trees catch fire. Unfortunately, the forest department is grossly under-equipped to fight the blazes. Often they try to beat out the fire with green branches. This method helps when the fire is confined to the surface, but once it engulfs the trees and other vegetation, officials become helpless spectators. Many forest officials complain that help from the administration is inadequate.
तो हमारे पास कोई मॉडर्न सोफिस्टिकेटेड इक्विपमेंट जैसे हमारा वायरलेस सिस्टम हो, वाकी टाकी हो, फायर टावर हो, तो यहाँ पर इन सब की बहुत कमी है, जिनकी बहुत आवश्यकता है.
यहाँ कोई भी व्हीकल नहीं है और हम जैसा कि हमारे सामने मीटिंग में डीएम से मांग की भी थी कि व्हीकल रेंज ऑफिसर के बिहाफ पे होनी चाहिए, लेकिन यहाँ पर हमारे डिस्पोजल पर कोई भी व्हीकल नहीं है.
Never asked me any manpower and any help. It was I who provided them 200 volunteers and 5 vehicles. It was on my initiative, not on those people.
The extent of damage to wildlife and vegetation is still to be evaluated. In many areas, the fires have only affected the undergrowth and shrub cover, but in some parts, pine and oak trees have been reduced to ashes. But what has sparked off these fires? Mystery shrouds the cause of these fires, which have spread extensively and rapidly in the hill districts of Uttarkashi, Tehri, Chamoli, Almora and several areas in Himachal. Some say this year the summer has been exceptionally hot, and with pre-monsoon showers being delayed, the dry undergrowth was a virtual tinderbox waiting to ignite. But there's also speculation that the fires were deliberately started. While this is yet to be established, some feel that the timber mafia operating in the areas might have a hand in it. After a blaze, timber traders are usually called in to clear dead trees. When this happens, there's little to stop them from felling good trees too. Moreover, with the Conservation Act protecting forests fiercely, timber traders have been making huge losses, and this might be one way of striking back at the Forest Department. Another possibility is that villagers themselves have set them off. Traditional burning of the dry undergrowth has been known to occur, as it's believed to improve the growth of grass for cattle. But the fires this season seem to indicate something else. With large forest areas being demarcated as sanctuaries, the collection of forest produce has been largely reduced, and cattle grazing halted in many areas. Villagers have taken strong objection to this. For example, when the Binsar sanctuary protecting pine and oak forests was set up a few years ago, villagers, resin tappers and timber traders agitated strongly and even threatened to set fire to it. This feeling of hostility towards the Forest Department is reflected in the fact that in most areas, villagers did not come forward to help quell the fires, some of which were burning on panchayati lands.
गांव वाले जो हैं बिल्कुल सपोर्ट के लिए नहीं आ रहे हैं, हमारी सहायता के लिए। गांव वालों के मालूम होता है कि हम लोग आग बुझाने के लिए आ रहे हैं, देख लेते हैं, देखने के बाद भी मदद के लिए नहीं आते हैं।
ये जो आग लगती है तो गांव वाले मदद क्यों नहीं करते?
गांव वाले ये आवाज़ देते ही नहीं गांव में। प्रधान पहले से तो पहले तो प्रधान जी को मालूम पड़ती है ना, प्रधान जी को दिया उन्होंने आवाज़, फॉरेस्ट वालों ने। प्रधान जी देते गाँव में खबर, आज कोई खबर देता ही नहीं।
Although it's too premature to establish the truth or falsehood of the respective claims and counterclaims, it's clear that the hostility between the Forest Department and the local people has been counterproductive. Not only have the authorities been unable to prevent the fires starting, but they've also been reduced to helpless onlookers as forests have been destroyed. If trees turn into ash overnight, forest conservation over the decades will come to naught, and this will only reinforce the sad fact that conservation in the absence of local support is hollow.
If we were able to destroy garbage as effectively as the fires are destroying our trees, we would be able to solve many of the problems of urbanization. But most citizens don't consider garbage disposal their responsibility. In fact, they have an unusually hypocritical attitude to cleanliness. They keep their homes clean but feel nothing about littering roads and streets. Dr. Mahadev of Mysore wanted us to do an item that reflects on the indifference of the public to hygiene. Tisha Srivastav reports.
Hypocrisy above all seems to be at the root of an urban Indian's attitude to cleanliness. Whichever part of the country we hail from, however educated we get, this ambivalence is a common factor.
Well, as far as your cleanliness subject is concerned, it's a matter of discipline of mind, which we all Indians lack.
Do you also ever throw something on the road?
I may have done that. I cannot prove that. I must have done that also. Because I also live in the same environment. I may have also faltered here and there.
So what is it about our environment that gives us this attitude? A good example is our behavior in public parks.
रोकने की कोशिश करते हैं, उनसे फिर धमकाते भी हैं, उनको सभी कुछ करते हैं, मगर वो मानते नहीं। पहले तो बोल देते हैं कि ठीक है भैया हम साफ करके चले जाएंगे, चिंता मत करना आप, एक भी कागज नहीं रहेगा, एक भी कोई कूड़ा नहीं रहेगा। उठा लेना चाहिए, मगर वो मतलब उस बात में शर्म समझते हैं ना अपनी, अगर हम कूड़ा उठाएं, झूठा तो उठाएं, भाई ये उठाएंगे अपना.
So when nobody is looking, we do exactly what our baser instincts tell us. But in public view, each one of us will condone such acts of property abuse.
If you're throwing your garbage outside, it's not good. I have also throw it in the gutters and all, not in the road.
Does this mean it's not in our nature to support public hygiene? This question has a bewildering significance, especially in a country with a fetish for bathing twice a day and brushing our teeth after every meal, scolding our children if they leave things in a mess. We even leave shoes outside the sanctorum of the home so as not to bring in outside grime, and have frequent altercations with housemaids who do not conform to our exacting sanitation standards, which is all very healthy and wise. But the minute we step out of our homes, why does cleanliness not seem a concern anymore?
Like you stay at home, you keep it clean because you have a sense of belonging that your home is yours. But people don't think that the city is theirs. There's no sense of belonging.
Sounds simplistic, but this really is a major part of the problem. Let's take this posh colony in a metro, for example. Now let's go into the bylanes. What greets you are mounds of garbage, a pocha on the electric wire, and even raw spoilt meat. Everyday households casually leave their domestic waste here. Is it this lack of belonging or lack of pride which makes some of us treat the cityscape like a virtual spittoon? Not just that, we make dump yards out of our protected heritage, leave ugly evidence of our literacy on the relics of time. And if nothing else, we go about littering as a matter of routine.
एक दो बारी ऐसा हुआ होगा क्या कोई कागज फेंक दिया by chance.
You should not throw the garbage on the roads. You should understand it that if the street is dirty, then the disease will spread and the people will die of it.
This child has understood the urgency of a problem which most of us so unthinkingly perpetrate. 80% of all sickness in India occurs due to our inability to keep things clean. This is a reality, not by chance but purely by human design. Yet, most of us remain arrogant, indifferent and look for excuses.
Everyone thinks that the other person is doing it. He's throwing it on the road. So why shouldn't I? He's doing it, I'm also doing it. I'm not penalized, he's not penalized. So what's wrong with it?
Why should I not throw it on this particular platform? But I don't think there are these garbage boxes or these dustbins are provided everywhere. Obviously, it's a part of the other side also, fault of other side also.
Yes, there's no doubt that municipal inefficiency is legendary in India. Nowhere is this more apparent than in urban areas where 220 million people live. In such circumstances, how do we expect immunization, pollution control, or health programs to succeed? What makes the odds seem even more formidable is our mindset. Somewhere deep down, we still believe that it is somebody else's job to clean up. This stems largely from the caste system and the fact that Indians with their modern pretensions haven't really stepped out of their mold. That's why, if you check someone who throws something, just see the responses.
तो अपना काम करके चलो यार, तू क्या है, तुम्हारा क्या मतलब है इसमें? वही you are preventing. Let it be like that. ये शाम को आ जाएंगे, सुबह आ जाएंगे, वो लेके जाते हैं.
I don't want to put my hand on the dirt. You can't help me go to door, don't throw your garbage outside, don't throw your this and all. क्या कर सकते हैं? Nothing. You should make some union, fine or something like that.
This is precisely what Singapore has done. Heavy fines ensure citizens keep things clean.
If otherwise the Indians were to go there and they know that they are not going to be fined, they will throw garbage on the streets over there also. You have to have some law.
So one way to lose our callousness is to initiate strict legal action. The other is to be shaken out of it by another gastroenteritis, cholera or malaria epidemic. Let's at least be moved to action because it's our health at stake and the health of 1.5 million children who die of diarrheal diseases caused by unhygienic living conditions. After all, as individual standards of living rise, what we have to raise collectively is the standard of life, and that cannot happen until we stop turning a blind eye.
है इंडिया।
With no AIDS vaccine in sight, the epidemic could see 26 million people infected and an annual death toll of 2 million by 2000 AD.